What if your dreams were seeds planted in nothing but dust? How do you begin when the ground seems utterly dead? Welcome to Story Lantern. Tonight, I'll walk you through how hope can sprout in the desolate canvas of your life. Once, in a quiet town in Oregon, lived Evan Mitchell, a former journalist turned urban gardener. He had walked away from a lucrative news career after burnout, convinced he had lost all purpose. For years, he drifted, walking empty streets, feeling every ambition had withered. He looked upon his small backyard and saw only cracked, barren earth. How do you plant a seed when your heart feels like that same cracked soil? In those months, Evan believed that possibility was gone. He thought growth belonged only to others, not him. Then one morning, he sat with a mug of coffee and asked himself, what if I treat my inner world like soil? What if I shift from believing there's nothing here to what could be here? He began with the smallest step, watering his own curiosity. He read articles about soil microbes, about composting and regenerative gardening. He journaled about buried dreams. He once wanted to start a neighborhood newsletter to tell stories of people around him. That idea had floated away, but he wrote it down again. He planted his inner garden, tentatively. He decided each day he would plant one tiny seed, even if it failed. He started with microgreens, radishes, herbs, things that germinate fast. He broke down that big vision, create a living storytelling space, into microscopic first steps, ordering a packet of seeds, building a raised bed from reclaimed wood, reading one gardening tip each morning. But the early days were harsh. Some seeds didn't sprout. Rainstorms flooded the bed. Pests chewed tender shoots. He felt frustration. He would stand in the yard and whisper to himself, this is not failure, this is process. Growth doesn't shout, it whispers underground. In those quiet weeks, Evan celebrated tiny wins. One leaf, a single radish poking through soil, a snail that decided not to eat the lettuce. He reminded himself, consistency matters more than perfection. He watered, mulched, adjusted. When external conditions looked bleak, neighbors skeptical, seasons tough, he clung to the soil by caring for it daily. He also sought unexpected resources, compost from a cafe down the street, discarded boards from a friend's renovation, volunteers from a community gardening forum. He discovered life in places he had labeled barren. Over 2 seasons, that little patch grew. Radishes, herbs, even a sun-loving tomato plant began to flourish. People walking by would stop and ask questions. Evan began sharing stories with them about soil, about resilience, about human dreams. He started a small weekend story and salad gathering. Visitors helped pick herbs and then sat together to share stories as they ate. His original dream, the storytelling space, had bloomed, grown from soil he had tended when he had nothing. Imagine now what that flourishing harvest looked like. Not just herbs, not just smiles, but a living community of hope. A place where someone once stuck could see tiny life again. Evan's dream had turned into real connection, and he often reminded me, you don't need perfect ground to start. You only need consistent care, a tiny seed, and belief in what could grow beneath. So here's the lesson I want you to hold close. Even in the desolate canvas, you can cultivate your inner soil, plant your resilient seed, nurture through scarcity, and let your harvest surprise you. You already have growth inside you. It's waiting for care and patience. Before we end tonight, I want to ask you, what tiny seed of hope is inside you, waiting to be planted? Share one small first step you'll take in the comments below. If you've ever felt stuck or hopeless and yet chose believing over despair, please share your story here. If this tale resonated, subscribe for more stories from Story Lantern, and share this episode with someone who needs a whisper of hope. Let's plant together.